Epictetus's forgotten mindset rule that changes all. Imagine this. You wake up one morning and everything feels wrong. The job you thought was secure suddenly disappears. A relationship you invested your whole heart into crumbles. The people you trusted betray you. The world that yesterday felt familiar now feels hostile, unpredictable, almost cruel. In those moments, most of us react the same way. We grasp, we panic, we rage, we despair. We say, "Why me? Why now? Why this?" And yet, none of these cries bring us peace. They only make the wound deeper. They only hand more power over to what is already outside our control. Now, picture a man who lost more than you could imagine, born into slavery, his body twisted by lameness, his life constantly threatened by masters and emperors who could kill him with a word. And yet, this man did not collapse. He did not curse his fate. Instead, he discovered a rule, a single mindset rule that could turn even chains into freedom. The rule was so simple and yet so demanding that most of us never dare to practice it. But if you do, it changes everything. The rule is this: it is not events themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them. You cannot control what happens to you, but you can always control how you respond. Do you feel how sharp that is? How it cuts through the fog of confusion? This rule, forgotten by most, can transform despair into calm and chaos into clarity. And yet it is the first truth we abandon the moment life becomes painful. Think about your own life. How often have you suffered more from your reaction than from the event itself? The insult that burns for days, not because of the words, but because you replay them again and again. The fear of tomorrow that steals today's joy, though tomorrow has not yet come. The anger at someone else's actions, as if your fury could alter their will. This is the trap we fall into daily, and this is the trap Epictetus teaches us to escape. He does not promise an easy road. He does not tell you that if you repeat this rule once, your life will magically transform. No. He says you must practice it every day, every hour, every time life throws you into the storm. But imagine the power if you did. Imagine being insulted and yet unshaken. Imagine losing wealth and yet unmoved. Imagine facing pain and yet retaining dignity. That is the fruit of this forgotten mindset rule. And it was not crafted in comfort. It was not whispered in ivory halls by men who had never seen suffering. It was forged in the fire of a man who knew chains, cruelty, and pain. A man who had every reason to despair, yet instead chose freedom within. His name was Epictetus. And if you let him, his voice will speak to you today, across centuries, sharper than any sword, stronger than any storm. So who was this man, this crippled slave who spoke like a king? And why should we listen to him in our age of screens, noise, and endless distraction? Epictetus was born around 50 AD, not in luxury, not in freedom, but in slavery. His earliest years were shaped by chains. He had no choice in his condition, no wealth, no family power to shield him. He served a cruel master, Epictetus, a freedman of the Emperor Nero. It is said that Epictetus's leg was twisted and broken by abuse, leaving him lame for life. Yet instead of being crushed, he learned to see with eyes unclouded by illusion. He saw that his body could be chained, but his mind remained his own. Imagine the paradox. Rome was filled with emperors, generals, and senators who had everything at their fingertips. They commanded legions, hoarded treasures, bathed in pleasure. And yet many of them were tormented, restless, enslaved by their desires. Nero himself, the most powerful man of his time, drowned in paranoia and fear. Meanwhile, Epictetus, lame and poor, discovered freedom that emperors could not buy. He learned that power without mastery of the self is no power at all. When he was finally freed, Epictetus did not chase wealth or status. He chose a life of philosophy, teaching in Rome until the Emperor Domitian banished philosophers. Then he went to Greece, to Nicopolis, where he opened a school. He lived with little, but his words carried immense weight. His students, some of them destined for high positions, came to him not for comfort, but for truth. And his truth was always the same. Focus only on what is within your control, and you will never be a slave again. This is why we must listen to him. Epictetus does not speak as one untouched by hardship. He speaks as one who walked through it and emerged unbroken. He does not theorize from comfort. He testifies from experience. He shows us that freedom is not given by governments, not bought by gold, not earned through applause. Freedom is a discipline of the mind. So when Epictetus speaks his forgotten rule, that it is not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments, he speaks from a place of iron-tested truth. And as we unravel this rule, as we see how it applies to fear, to anger, to suffering, to death itself, you will find it reshaping the way you see your own life. Because you may not be in chains, but you may still be enslaved to anger, to fear, to desire, to the opinions of others. And the path out begins where Epictetus began, by mastering the one thing no one can take from you, your mind. The rule itself is deceptively simple, so simple that many dismiss it. Epictetus tells us, you cannot control what happens, but you can control how you respond. At first glance it feels obvious. We nod, we agree, and then we go back to living as if it weren't true. We try to bend the world to our will. We try to force people to treat us as we wish. We rage when things don't go according to plan. In truth, we have forgotten the rule, and in forgetting it, we hand over our peace of mind. Think of how much of your day is consumed by things outside your control. You scroll through the news and feel powerless in the face of politics and war. You post online and obsess over likes and comments, none of which are in your control. You measure your worth by your salary, your status, the recognition of others, all things that can vanish in a moment. And when they do, you crumble, because you placed your happiness in hands that were never yours to begin with. The forgotten rule is not just a clever phrase, it is a lifeline. Epictetus is telling us, stop wasting your strength on what you cannot command. The weather, the past, the opinions of others, the unfolding of fate, none of these belong to you. Why bleed yourself dry over them? Why fight shadows? What is yours, and yours alone, is the faculty of judgment. The way you interpret what happens, the story you tell yourself, the choice of how to act in the face of it. That is your kingdom, and no man, no master, no tyrant can seize it. Why then is this rule so often forgotten? Because the human heart resists it. We crave control. We want to bend the universe to our desires. We cling to the illusion that if we plan well enough, work hard enough, manipulate carefully enough, the world will fall into line. When it doesn't, we rage against reality. To remember the rule is to accept that life will never obey you. To live it is to release your grip and find peace not in the obedience of the world, but in the mastery of yourself. This rule is radical because it overturns our instincts. It asks us to accept powerlessness where we long for power, and to claim power where we usually ignore it. The slave who embraces it can live freer than a king. The sick who practice it can suffer with dignity. The poor who remember it can taste contentment richer than gold. The rich and powerful without it are nothing but prisoners of fortune's shifting winds. Our modern world makes forgetting easy. Social media trains us to measure worth by applause. Advertising teaches us to crave endlessly for what lies outside us. Our culture rewards outrage, comparison, and envy, all poisons born of trying to control what isn't ours. This is why Epictetus's rule matters more today than perhaps ever before. Amid endless noise, it is the voice of clarity. Focus only on what is yours and you will be unshakable. Imagine for a moment that you lived this rule fully. Someone insults you, yet you smile because you know their words are not yours to control, but your response is. You lose money, yet you remain steady because money was never part of your inner fortress. A storm rages, the world shifts, death itself approaches, yet you remain calm because nothing can touch the mastery of your mind. This is not fantasy. This is the freedom Epictetus discovered, the freedom he calls each of us to embrace. To see the rule in its rawest form, you must look not to his words alone, but to his life. For Epictetus was not a man who theorized in comfort. He was a man who lived as a prisoner, a slave, under cruelty most of us cannot imagine. And yet, even in chains, he was freer than his captors. Epictetus was born without status, without wealth, without freedom. His body was not his own. His master could command him at will, beat him, break him, discard him. It is said that when Epictetus's master twisted his leg, Epictetus warned him calmly, "If you continue, you will break it." The master ignored him and did just that, snapping the bone. Epictetus did not scream or curse. He said simply, "Did I not tell you?" His body was broken, but his will remained whole. What kind of man can respond like that? What kind of mind refuses to surrender even when the flesh is crushed? The answer is a man who has learned the forgotten rule. Epictetus knew that his master's cruelty was not his to control. He knew that the breaking of his leg could touch his body, but not his soul. He knew that the true harm would not come from pain itself, but from allowing rage, bitterness, or despair to consume him. And so he did not yield. He endured with calm because his fortress was within. This is why he could say, "Lameness is an impediment to the leg, but not to the will." He understood that misfortune can touch flesh, but cannot touch freedom of judgment unless you allow it. His captors had chains, but they could never bind his mind. He was freer in his soul than they were in their power, because they were still slaves to anger, pride, and fear. He was free, even lame, because he had learned to master himself. Think of the power in that. Most of us live in comfort compared to him, and yet we are enslaved by trifles. A rude comment ruins our day. A minor loss fills us with despair. A passing fear robs us of sleep. Epictetus endured chains, mockery, pain, and still held fast to his peace. His example is not there to shame us, but to awaken us. If he could live free in bondage, then what excuse have we, who are not chained, yet live as prisoners of our own emotions? The forgotten rule is not a decoration for the intellect. It is a weapon for the soul. It is the shield Epictetus held when cruelty struck him. It is the fire that burned in him when others tried to extinguish his spirit. And it can be yours too, if you choose it, if you practice it, if you refuse to surrender the one thing that is always yours, the freedom of your mind. Picture a storm hammering against the walls of a fortress. The wind howls, the rain lashes, the earth shakes, yet inside the stone walls a fire still burns, and those who dwell within are calm. This is the image of the human mind Epictetus gives us. Life is the storm. Pain, loss, insults, disasters. They rage outside, beyond your command. But within you is the fortress no storm can breach unless you open the gates. This fortress is your reason, your ability to judge, to choose, to respond. It is the citadel Marcus Aurelius later called the inner stronghold, and Epictetus lived by it. Why do most of us feel so helpless? Because we have abandoned our fortress and run outside, begging the storm to be gentle. We plead with fate not to strike us, we curse the winds, we grasp at raindrops, and then wonder why we are always wet and shivering. The truth is simple. You cannot command the storm. You cannot order fortune to obey you. You cannot make death retreat, or pain vanish, or others behave as you wish. But you can always retreat to your fortress. You can always remind yourself, none of these things are mine. My mind, my will, my choice, these are mine, and they are enough. Imagine being in a courtroom where everyone slanders you, yet you remain silent and calm because their opinions are theirs, not yours. Imagine being in battle, arrows falling, comrades struck down, and yet you steady your heart, because courage belongs to you, though life itself may not. Imagine losing everything, wealth, home, health, and yet holding yourself upright, saying, I still command myself. That is the fortress of the Stoic. Epictetus understood this so well because he had nothing else. Stripped of freedom, he discovered where true freedom dwells. Robbed of comfort, he found wealth in mastery of mind. Deprived of honor, he found dignity in self-control. This is why his words still strike like iron. Nothing external can harm you unless you let it inside. Guard your judgments, and you guard your soul. But to guard them, you must know clearly what belongs to you and what does not. This is where Epictetus draws his sharp line, the dichotomy of control. If you forget this distinction, you will always live enslaved. If you remember it, you will always be free. There are things in your control and things outside it. Nothing else exists. To confuse the two is to invite suffering. Your opinions, your desires, your choices, your actions, these are yours. They belong to you fully. But your body, your reputation, your possessions, the behavior of others, the outcome of events, these do not belong to you. You may influence them, but you do not own them. They can be taken from you at any moment, like sand slipping through fingers. To treat them as yours is to build your house on water. Think of death. You cannot avoid it. It comes when it comes. Yet most of our fears are rooted in pretending we can delay it forever. Think of reputation. You cannot force others to admire you. Their minds are their own, as yours is your own. Yet how often do we lie awake, tortured by what others might think? Think of wealth. You may earn it, but you cannot make it secure. Fire, theft, disaster, corruption, at any moment it can vanish. And yet how much of life is sacrificed chasing it? Now think of what is truly yours. You can choose to be honest, you can choose to be courageous, you can choose to forgive, to endure, to rise again. No man, no law, no misfortune can tear that from you. Epictetus tells us that here lies freedom, to live attached only to what is yours and detached from what belongs to fortune. How does this apply in life today? Imagine losing your job. If you have built your peace on the job itself, you collapse. But if you remember the dichotomy, you remind yourself, the job is not mine, but the way I meet unemployment is. I can choose courage, I can choose dignity, I can seek work again without despair. Imagine betrayal by a friend. If you cling to the illusion that you can control loyalty, you are shattered. But if you accept that their actions are not yours, you find steadiness. You remind yourself, what is mine is to forgive or to let go, but not to be broken. The rule sharpens like a blade here. When you confuse externals for your own, you suffer endlessly. When you divide them rightly, peace follows. The storm is loud, but your fortress is silent, and in that silence you are free. Epictetus does not say this to comfort. He says it because it is the only way to live unshaken. For if you chase control over what belongs to others, you will always lose. If you hold fast only to yourself, you will always win. Fear is born in the shadows of things we cannot control. We fear death because it cannot be delayed forever. We fear poverty because we cannot guarantee fortune's favor. We fear rejection because we cannot command the hearts of others. At its root, fear is the clinging to what is not ours. Epictetus understood this better than anyone. He saw clearly that if you attach your peace to externals, fear will haunt you endlessly. But if you place your peace in your own choices, fear has nothing to grip. A soldier stepping onto the battlefield trembles not because of the battle itself, but because he has already tried to control survival. He wants certainty in an uncertain place. If he remembers the rule, he fights with courage, saying, "Death is not mine, but courage is." An entrepreneur facing the collapse of his business fears ruin, not because of the loss itself, but because he thinks wealth is what secures his life. If he remembers the rule, he says, "Wealth is not mine, but perseverance is." A student awaiting results fears rejection, not because of the grades, but because he has tied his worth to the judgment of others. If he remembers the rule, he says, "Their judgment is not mine, but my effort, my discipline, my integrity are." When you live by the rule, fear loses its sting. For what is left to fear when you no longer build your soul upon what fortune can snatch away? Death may come, but it cannot rob you of living with honor. Poverty may strike, but it cannot take your virtue. Rejection may wound, but it cannot touch your character. Fear belongs to the man who has forgotten the rule. Freedom belongs to the man who remembers it. And then there is anger, the most common betrayal of the rule. How often do we flare up because of what others do or say? Someone insults you and you boil inside. Someone wrongs you and rage consumes you. Anger is nothing more than the refusal to accept what is not yours to command. It is the child stamping its foot at the storm. Epictetus tells us plainly, if someone offends you, remember that it is not their act that harms you, but your judgment of it. You decide whether to let the words pierce or to let them fall. To be angry is to confess slavery, because you are admitting another person's actions rule over your peace. You hand them the keys to your fortress, and they walk in laughing. Think of how many quarrels are born from this mistake. A neighbor is rude, and you take it as a wound. A colleague criticizes you, and you carry the insult like poison. A stranger cuts you off in traffic, and you shout as though the world has ended. But what if you remembered the rule? What if you said, "Their rudeness is theirs, not mine. My response is mine, and I will not give it away"? Suddenly, the anger dissolves. You walk free, while they remain chained to their ignorance. Does this mean you never act against injustice? No, it means you act with reason, not with rage. Anger clouds judgment, but the rule clears it. If action is needed, take it calmly, without surrendering your inner balance. That is what Epictetus practiced. That is what he calls us to practice. So ask yourself, how often do you let another's words or deeds rob you of peace? How often do you make yourself their slave by giving them the power to disturb you? Remember the rule, they act as they choose. You respond as you choose, and that choice is freedom. Pain is unavoidable, but suffering is something more. Pain comes from the body, from wounds, from illness, from loss. Suffering is what the mind adds on top, the resentment, the self-pity, the endless cry of, "Why me?" Epictetus knew pain intimately. His body was twisted, his leg broken, his life marked by hardship. Yet he did not allow pain to become his master. He said, "It is not the things themselves that trouble us, but our opinions about them." The breaking of a bone is pain. The belief that it is unbearable, unjust, or catastrophic is suffering. When he walked with a limp, Epictetus did not call himself cursed. He did not let his injury define him. He said, "Lameness is an impediment to the leg, but not to the will." Do you see the clarity in that? Pain touches the body, but it cannot touch your freedom unless you let it. The suffering that crushes most people is not born of the event itself, but of the meaning they attach to it. Think of the man who loses his fortune. The loss itself is real, but what multiplies his agony is the thought, "I am ruined, I am nothing without it, my life is over." The truth is different. Fortune was never his to control. His response, his dignity, his courage, those remain. Think of the woman abandoned by someone she loved. The pain of loss is real, but the greater wound comes when she tells herself, "I will never be whole again. I am worthless without their love." Yet worth was never theirs to give or take. When you separate pain from suffering, you begin to see life as it is. Pain will come, no one escapes it. But you need not add chains to the burden. You need not surrender twice, once to pain and again to despair. Epictetus reminds us, the rule applies even here. You cannot always stop the sting of pain, but you can decide whether it will rule your soul. To endure with dignity, to accept with calm, to bear with patience, this is victory. The same truth applies in relationships. How many of our greatest agonies come not from pain itself, but from trying to control others? We want them to love us as we love them. We want them to act as we think they should. We want loyalty, gratitude, constant agreement. And when they fail, as people inevitably do, we rage, we grieve, we fall apart. But Epictetus reminds us, other people's choices are not ours to control. Their love, their loyalty, their actions, these are theirs. What is ours is how we respond. If a friend betrays you, it is natural to feel pain. But suffering grows when you cling to the illusion that you could have prevented it or that they owed you eternal loyalty. They acted according to their nature, not yours. What remains in your power is how you carry yourself afterward, whether you descend into bitterness or rise into forgiveness and freedom. If someone you love withdraws, you may mourn their absence, but the chains of suffering only tighten when you demand that they return. Their heart is not yours to command. What is yours is how you choose to continue, whether you collapse in despair or walk forward with dignity. Even in the joy of love, the rule must be remembered. To love another as though they are wholly yours is to build your peace on shifting ground. To love while remembering they are free, that their life is theirs, is to love with clarity. You enjoy their presence without chaining your soul to it. If they remain, you are grateful. If they leave, you are not destroyed. This does not mean coldness, it does not mean apathy. It means a higher kind of love, one that respects freedom, yours and theirs, for only when you release the urge to control do you truly honor the other. Epictetus knew this, and so he taught, "Do not seek to make others act as you wish. Seek instead to make your own will align with nature, and peace will be yours." In both suffering and in relationships, the forgotten rule shines the same light. Pain may visit, others may wound you, but your response remains your own. To remember this is to live unbroken, to love without chains, to walk through loss without being destroyed. Epictetus lived it, and he calls us to live it too. Wealth and fame tempt us with promises they cannot keep. They whisper that if we have enough money, enough recognition, enough applause, we will finally be secure. Yet Epictetus warned that these are illusions, fragile as glass, dangerous as chains. To build your peace upon them is to make yourself a servant to fortune. For wealth can vanish overnight, and fame is nothing more than the shifting opinions of a crowd. If your happiness depends on them, then your happiness is not yours. It belongs to strangers and to fate. Epictetus himself lived with almost nothing. He did not gather possessions or chase the favor of powerful men. He lived simply, teaching, with little more than what he needed to survive. He understood that wealth was not evil in itself, nor was reputation, but they are not to be confused with true good. They are tools, indifferent in themselves, dangerous only when mistaken for the foundation of life. Think of the man who builds his worth on wealth. While he has it, he boasts, but in his heart he is restless, for he knows it may vanish. He watches the markets, he fears theft, he dreads decline. His fortune owns him more than he owns it. Think of the woman who lives for fame. Every compliment fuels her, every criticism crushes her. She is enslaved to the voices of others, never at rest, never free. They are rich, they are celebrated, but they are not masters of themselves. Now think of the one who remembers the rule. Wealth comes, and he uses it wisely. Wealth goes, and he remains calm, because his true treasure lies within. Fame arrives, and she accepts it without pride. Fame fades, and she is unchanged, because her worth is not measured by applause. This is the paradox. The one who cares least for wealth and fame is the one most capable of enjoying them when they appear, and the one least harmed when they vanish. Epictetus wanted his students to see clearly. Externals are never secure. To chain your peace to them is to guarantee fear, envy, and grief. True security comes only from what cannot be taken: your reason, your choices, your virtue. When you remember this, you are rich without money, honored without fame, secure without walls. And so we come to freedom itself. What does it mean to be free? Ask most people, and they will say it is the ability to do whatever you want, to go wherever you wish, to answer to no one. But Epictetus redefined freedom. He said, true freedom is not found in ruling others or escaping chains, but in mastering yourself. A man who cannot govern his desires, who cannot endure loss, who cannot restrain his anger, is a slave, even if he sits on a throne. A man who controls his will, who accepts what comes with calm, who refuses to be mastered by fear or greed, is free, even if he wears shackles. Consider Nero, the emperor of Rome. He had armies, riches, palaces, pleasures beyond measure. Yet he was consumed by paranoia, cruelty, and rage. His empire was vast, but his mind was a prison. Now consider Epictetus, once a slave, lame, with no possessions to his name. Yet he walked with serenity, teaching others how to be free. Who was the true slave? Who was the true master? Freedom, as Epictetus taught, is not political, but personal. Governments may grant rights, armies may guard borders, wealth may provide comfort, but none of these guarantee freedom of soul. You can be rich and enslaved, poor and free. You can live under tyranny, yet rule yourself, or live in a democracy and still be chained to your own desires. The only freedom that matters is the freedom to choose your response, to govern your mind, to align your will with nature. This is why Epictetus could say that even a slave may live freer than kings. For what is the use of ruling others if you cannot rule yourself? What is the point of commanding legions if you are commanded by anger, fear, or lust? Freedom is not the absence of chains, but the absence of mastery by anything outside your own reasoned choice. That is the forgotten rule in its purest form. And so the call is not to chase freedom in the world, but to claim it within. To live by Epictetus's teaching is to walk through life unchained, no matter the circumstance. Wealth may come, fame may fade, death may knock, fortune may strike, but if you command yourself, you are free. If you forget, you will be a slave, no matter your throne. Epictetus never treated philosophy as something to be admired from afar or discussed in leisure over wine. To him, it was training, hard, daily training, no different from a soldier preparing for war. He warned his students that philosophy was not for idle speculation, but for life itself. Just as the soldier drills with his sword so that when battle comes, his hand moves without hesitation, so too must we train our minds. For life will strike suddenly, without warning. Death, insult, loss, betrayal, they come as ambushes. And if you have not trained, you will falter. He urged his students to practice small things, to rehearse adversity, to harden their minds for what would surely come. He taught the exercise of premeditatio malorum, the meditation on evils. Each morning, imagine the insults you may hear, the delays you may face, the betrayals that could come, not to darken your heart, but to strengthen it. For when they arrive, you will not be surprised. You will say, "I knew you were coming. I have already met you in my mind, and I know how to greet you." Journaling, too, was part of the training. To write down each day what you faced, how you responded, where you failed, and where you stood firm. To hold yourself accountable, not to others, but to your own soul. Each evening you ask, did I give my peace away to what was not mine? Did I meet the world as a master or as a slave? And then you resolve to do better tomorrow. Even in conversation, he urged practice. When insulted, respond with calm. When tempted, pause and remember the rule. When fortune flatters, remind yourself it is not yours. Each moment is a drill, each trial a test, each insult a chance to strengthen the will. This is the way of the Stoic, not to speak of virtue, but to embody it, to live it in the smallest and the greatest things. And above all, the training is relentless, for just as the soldier cannot slacken lest he lose his edge, so too must the mind be sharpened daily. There are no breaks in the war against ignorance and passion. Each day is a campaign, each thought is a battlefield, and the prize is freedom. This training becomes most visible when we face death, for death is the one certainty, the one event no man can escape, and yet it is the one thing that terrifies most of humanity. We flee from it, deny it, distract ourselves from it, as though it were an intruder we could outwit. Epictetus would not allow such illusions. He told his students, "Death is nothing dreadful, but the judgment about death, that it is dreadful, which is dreadful." Consider this carefully. Death itself is a moment, a dissolution, a return to nature. What torments us is not death, but our opinion that it is terrible. Epictetus accepted death calmly because he knew it was not his to command. It belongs to the order of the universe, not to his will. His will, his choice, his reason, that was his, and so he refused to waste them in fear. To live in constant dread of death is to die before dying. It is to live as a prisoner, chained not by death itself, but by the thought of it. Epictetus chose differently. He said, "When death comes, let it find you doing your duty, calm, steady, unafraid. Let it find you having lived according to nature, having mastered yourself. For what is more shameful than to fear what no man can escape?" Modern life hides death from us. We push it to hospitals, we cover it with rituals, we pretend it is far away, but still it comes, sudden and sure. The Stoic faces it with open eyes, not with despair, not with clinging, but with calm acceptance. For to remember the rule here is to know, death is not mine, but how I meet it is. Imagine the freedom of that. To walk through life unafraid, knowing that death cannot rob you of your dignity. To savor each moment, not with desperation, but with gratitude, because you no longer flee from the end. Epictetus would tell us, do not fear death, fear never having lived as a free soul. Death takes the body, but only you can surrender the will. And if you never surrender it, then even in death, you remain undefeated. Why do so many fail to live by this rule when it is so clear, so liberating, so simple? Epictetus would say it is because of blindness, because people do not see where their true power lies. From childhood, we are trained to measure ourselves by externals. We are praised for winning, for grades, for wealth, for beauty. We are punished for failing, for falling short, for being rejected. Little by little, we come to believe that our worth lives in things beyond our command. And so we grow into adults who are enslaved by the same illusions. We blame others for our anger, forgetting that our response is ours. We cling to outcomes, forgetting that outcomes are fortune's domain. We demand control over things that never belong to us, and then despair when we cannot grasp them. This is the root of suffering, ignorance of what is ours and what is not. Epictetus saw this in his students, men of wealth and status who still came to him restless, unhappy, enslaved. They had everything, yet lacked the one thing needful, mastery of themselves. The ego is another enemy. The ego whispers that to yield to reality is weakness, that to accept what is beyond your control is surrender. But the opposite is true. It takes far greater strength to master your own soul than to lash out at what you cannot change. The ego wants to rule the world. Wisdom wants only to rule itself. Cultural conditioning also blinds us. We live in societies that glorify conquest, control, influence. We are told that to be successful we must dominate, achieve, acquire. We are not taught to guard our judgments, to master our desires, to accept what comes. And so, when Epictetus's rule confronts us, we resist it. We call it too harsh, too passive, too unrealistic. But what is truly unrealistic is to live as though the world will bend to your will. Sooner or later, the illusion shatters, and those unprepared collapse with it. And yet, for all these obstacles, the choice remains. At any moment, you may remember the rule. At any moment, you may refuse to hand your peace to externals. At any moment, you may claim the freedom that was always yours. Most fail because they never choose. They drift, they forget, they surrender without knowing it. But you need not follow them. Epictetus offers a different path, narrow and steep, but leading to freedom. The question is, will you walk it? To see how it applies, let us step into modern life. Imagine losing your job. The fear, the shame, the panic, these come from believing your worth depends on employment. But if you remember the rule, you say, the job is not mine. What is mine is my effort, my honesty, my persistence. The loss does not ruin me. It only shifts the arena in which I practice my virtue. Imagine a breakup. The heart aches, yes, but what multiplies the pain is the thought, I cannot live without them. Yet Epictetus would say, their love was never yours to command. What is yours is the way you love, the dignity with which you part, the gratitude for what was. You mourn, but you are not destroyed. Imagine being attacked online, criticized, mocked by strangers. If you cling to reputation, you crumble. But if you remember, reputation is not mine, you stand firm. You say, their words are theirs, not mine. My peace is mine. Let them speak. I will not hand them my freedom. Imagine financial struggle. Bills pile up, debts weigh heavy, anxiety grows. But even here, the rule holds. Wealth is not yours, but character is. Fortune may strip you bare, but she cannot strip away honesty, discipline, or courage unless you surrender them. And so you endure, not with bitterness, but with resilience. This is the forgotten rule brought to life in modern flesh. It is not abstract, not distant, but as practical as breath. Each trial you face today, big or small, is an arena for practicing it. Each insult, each fear, each loss, each disappointment is your chance to draw the line. This is not mine, but my response is. And in that moment, you either remain free or you fall back into chains. Epictetus does not ask us to admire the rule. He asks us to live it, here and now, in traffic, in offices, in homes, in hospitals, in the silence of our own minds. For the battlefield of the Stoic is not in distant wars, but in the daily moments when life demands, will you hand me your peace, or will you keep it? The choice is always yours. Listen carefully, and you can still hear Epictetus speaking across the centuries. His voice was never loud, never draped in pomp or luxury, but it was sharp, steady, and unyielding. He spoke not to impress, but to awaken. His words are not chained to the marble schools of Nicopolis, where he once taught. They echo into every age where people suffer, despair, or lose themselves in the chase for what does not last. And today, perhaps more than ever, his voice is needed. We live in an age of endless noise. Screens shout at us, headlines terrify us, advertisements whisper that we are never enough. Our worth seems measured in followers, our peace stolen by every scroll, our attention consumed by comparison and envy. It is a new world, but the old illusions are the same. We believe that if we gather enough, if we are praised enough, if we win enough, then finally we will rest. Yet the rest never comes. Epictetus calls to us like a steady flame in the chaos. You are not the slave of these things unless you make yourself so. Their noise is theirs, their demands are theirs. What is yours is your judgment, your will, your response. Guard that, and nothing can enslave you. You are no less capable than he was. Do not think his strength was given only to him, born of suffering unique to his life. No, his teaching is not that he was extraordinary, but that every human soul has this fortress within. You have it too. You may be surrounded by wealth or by poverty, by acclaim or by obscurity, by love or by loss. It does not matter. The same freedom that lived in Epictetus lives in you. It waits only for your choice. This is why his voice still matters, because it cuts through excuses, because it exposes illusions, because it reminds us that freedom is never given, but always chosen. The world will not hand it to you, but neither can the world take it from you. You must claim it by remembering the rule. Externals are not yours, but your response always is. That is why Epictetus still speaks, and why we must listen. But listening is not enough. Philosophy without practice is like medicine left in the bottle. The cure does nothing until it is taken. Epictetus warned his students not to admire his words, but to use them, to carry them into the marketplace, into the home, into the heart. The rule must become daily practice until it is as natural as breath. Begin each morning with remembrance. Before the world begins its noise, sit quietly and remind yourself, today I will meet delay, insult, pain, loss. These belong to fortune, not to me. What belongs to me is how I meet them. Prepare your mind like armor, so that when the arrows come, they find no soft place to pierce. As the day unfolds, see every encounter as training. When someone offends you, pause. Ask yourself, Is this mine to control or theirs? If theirs, let it go. When fortune smiles and you are praised or rewarded, remind yourself, this too is not mine. Enjoy it without pride, so that when it leaves, you remain steady. When fear rises, name it. Ask, am I fearing something that belongs to me or something outside? If outside, why waste my soul upon it? At night, before sleep, review. Ask, where did I keep the rule and where did I break it? Did I surrender my peace to the words of another? Did I cling to what was not mine? Did I remain master of myself? There is no condemnation here, only correction. Each day is a lesson, each failure an opportunity to grow stronger. Epictetus knew that freedom is not won in a single moment, but forged in the repetition of practice. Like an athlete training the body, the Stoic trains the mind. The weights are insults, losses, fears, and temptations. The muscle is reason, strengthened through endurance. Over time, the mind becomes steady, the soul unshakable, the will free. This is the path. Not grand gestures, but daily remembrance. Not distant philosophy, but lived discipline. Each morning, each trial, each evening, you practice the rule. And little by little, the chains fall away and you discover the truth. Epictetus lived, that no man can enslave you, no loss can destroy you, no fear can master you, if you remember what is yours and guard it well. What does life look like when the rule is no longer just an idea, but the air you breathe? It looks like calm in the midst of chaos, strength in the midst of loss, joy in the midst of simplicity. It looks like a person who no longer flinches at insults, who no longer trembles at death, who no longer clings desperately to what fortune may give or take. It looks like a human being finally living as they were meant to live. Free. Picture someone who has trained themselves in this way. A man loses his wealth, and yet he stands unbroken, saying, "It was never mine. What is mine, I still possess." A woman is betrayed by a friend, and yet she does not collapse, saying, "Their loyalty was theirs to give. My response is mine to command." A family faces sickness, yet they endure with dignity, saying, "The body may weaken, but the will need not." This is not fantasy. This is the fruit of the forgotten rule, lived out day by day. The transformation is not loud, it is not dramatic, it is quiet, steady, unshakable. Others will notice it in you. They will see that while they are tossed by every wind, you remain anchored. While they rage at every insult, you remain composed. While they are consumed by fear, you move forward with courage. You will not boast of it, you will not need to. Your life itself will be testimony enough. And the greatest gift of this transformation is not just peace for yourself, but strength for others. When the storms of life strike those around you, you will be the one they turn to. Your calm will steady them. Your freedom will inspire them. Your example will teach more than any words could. This is how Epictetus' forgotten rule spreads, not through lectures, but through lives that embody it. But the decision must be made, for all of this rests on whether you will choose to live by the rule or continue as before. The world will tempt you to forget. It will tell you that peace lies in wealth, in reputation, in control of others. It will lure you back into chains. But you know better now. You know that freedom lies only within. You know that no man can harm you without your consent, that no event can break you unless you surrender. You know the fortress is yours, if only you will guard it. So I ask you now, will you live this rule? Will you, when insulted, remember that your response is yours? Will you, when loss comes, remember that what matters most cannot be taken? Will you, when death approaches, remember that it is not yours to command, but dignity in facing it is? Do not let these words remain admiration only. Do not say, "Yes, that is wise," and then return unchanged. Epictetus himself warned against this. Philosophy is not to be praised but practiced. Freedom is not to be admired but seized. The rule is simple. It can be spoken in a single breath. It is not events themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them. You cannot control what happens, but you can control how you respond. This is the key. This is the path. This is the forgotten rule that changes all. So take it with you. Test it today. When the next difficulty strikes, pause and ask, "Is this mine or not?" If not, let it go. If yes, hold it with strength. And when night falls, look back and ask, "Did I live free today, or did I surrender?" Then rise tomorrow and try again. Epictetus calls you to this life, not someday, not later, but now. Do not just admire him. Do not just agree with him. Live as he lived. Live free, unshaken, unchained. The rule is yours. The choice is yours. Will you live it?